what would you say is the difference between love as a skill and love as an enthusiasm?
I mean, I think the difference is signal. The first time you have to ask yourself, I've got a difficulty in the relationship. What could I do about it?
Yeah.
Rather than just going with the feeling. Maybe the feeling is joy and enthusiasm. Maybe the feeling is anger and frustration. But the moment you step back and you just go, is there anything that I can do vis-a-vis these emotions? And I think that's the beginning of a more conscious kind of vision of relationships. And I think that too often we don't see that there's anything we can consciously do to make our relationships go better. If they're starting to go wrong, we just think, oh well, that's just love has died, and love is just like this volcanic force within us. There's nothing we can do to make it grow or shrink or whatever. Or if suddenly sex has gone off the boil, we kind of just think, well, that's just how it is, rather than actually desire. And the way desire works is it's got lots of kind of reasons behind it, and people will become unable to have sex with one another if other things are not in place, or if there's maybe kind of background of anger or bitterness, or so just becoming more psychological about relationships seems to be really key, but not spoken about as much as it should be, I think.
I think I've noticed a trend, not only with myself but with a lot of my friends, and a lot of serial monogamous friends who kind of just go from one long-term 2-year relationship to the next. I see that around the 18-month mark in these relationships, almost to the dot, I can almost put it in my calendar and say, okay, this is when you'll give me a call saying when did you get a cocktail. Something happens, something changes, the chemicals wear off, and why do we seem to think that doubt means don't? And do you think it should be the case?
Look, I mean, I think there's lots to be said for short-term relationships, short-termish relationships, and I don't want to say that only the long-term is the real kind, but I think that for many people, at a certain point, they'll reach a point where they'll go, I would really want a long-term relationship. I'm tired of having to explain myself again to another person. I'm tired of having to take a new person around my life, explain my family, my upbringing. I don't want to do that anymore. And I think that's a really interesting moment. And if that person then comes to you and says, but I don't know how to make it work, then that's a really interesting moment where I think there are so many things that one can start to do. And I think I'm looking forward to the age of the kind of psychological relationships where two people are not merely seeing a relationship as a hormonally driven thing or as a mysterious sort of like semi-divine force that's like visited you, but as something that you can kind of understand and with logical dynamics within it, and
negotiate a little.
Yeah, but also, I mean, people are really interesting around sex, for example, because sex at one level seems so just a passionate force within you. But I think the reason why sex goes wrong often has got clear psychological reasons behind it, and that people are sometimes reluctant to explore. So, I mentioned anger, but anger is a really key one. Why do some people, notion of like, I've gone off sex, it's like, really? Like, why might that be? And there's a sort of story we tell ourselves that people just do go off sex. Of course, sometimes they do, but it doesn't help it if you think that your partner's kind of belittling you in other areas, and maybe the last time you went out was like actually kind of pushing you to the shadows while they were kind of flirting with someone else or whatever. You might just instinctively respond by going off sex. And you've even forgotten the reason why you've gone off sex, and you can't trace it back. Or that idea's just gone lost. And so, so many things that look just like passionate drives that have run out, often have got real reasons behind them.
If we are to place less emphasis on what I think you referred to as that special feeling, and approach relationships in a more pragmatic way, what do you think are some of the important points to consider?
Well, I think, I think a really big feature of any relationship, if you're in a big city, say, is why am I with this person and not like somebody else? Right? Because we're surrounded by choices all the time, and it's extremely tempting, and technology brings even more choices, etc. So, in a way, one of the things we've got to kind of answer to ourselves is we've got to kind of come to a view of like, why am I with this person rather than with another person? And frequently the thought is, it's an accident, it's a mistake, I've got the wrong model. And out there's this kind of better model that's less broken, that's less annoying, etc. Because we get to have such a kind of ringside seat on the flaws of the person that we're with kind of long term. And by definition, we'll start to see strangers and think, well, surely they look quite nice, surely they would be easier. And I think it's a really important moment when we realize, without wishing to kind of do down the charms of strangers, that anyone is going to be carrying a lot of complexity within them. It might be a different kind to the one that your partner's got, but there just will be a lot of stuff. And it's so hard to trust that that's actually true.
They're always so pretty, aren't they?
Exactly. That's the thing. And you just can't believe it. And they're so charming because people are genuinely charming. But the thing is, your partner's charming too. You've just forgotten to look at them in that way. And because you own them, like everything we've ever owned ever since we were children, we don't really like it. We like the other guys' toys.
It's a bit boring.
So I think, so I don't want to say that like all relationships should stick together, but I think some relationships end prematurely, and a lot of hurt is caused by actually interpretations of what love should be that are misleading and unnecessary destruction.